Welcome to Beyond X's and O's podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, and we're excited for not only our fifth episode today, but our fifth guest, someone who I have a lot of respect for. I've gotten to know over the last few years and just, runs their program right, does things the right way, and someone who I've been very lucky to work with joint practices and 7-on-7s and even scrimmages. He was the current head football coach at Cambridge Rindge and Latin High School from 2017 till now. It was also the head wrestling coach there from 2001 to 2019, and then was the lacrosse coach from 2011, I believe, to about 2018, 2019, if I did my homework right. So someone who's very heavily invested into Cambridge school system, their athletes, the community. Ladies and gentlemen, Roy Howard.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How's everything, Roy? I'm so glad you were able to get on here.
I'm happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So one thing I learned about Roy at the very beginning of this was I knew how great of a football coach he was, but I didn't know also how great of a wrestling coach he was in the career that he had. So when we had our little phone interview, it was amazing to find out this aspect of him. So I really wanted to kind of sink our teeth into that first, Roy, and really just kind of talk about how did you get started into coaching high school wrestling at Rindge and Latin?
So I started coaching high school wrestling because I wrestled in high school at 103 pounds. A lot of people won't believe that right now, but but yeah, I started coaching back then, and then a friend of mine's really started the program, like bringing it back, and he asked me if I wanted to help him, and I said sure, let's do it.
That's awesome. And so I know you started out first as an assistant, and then after a few years of that, you took over the program in 2001. Talk about that jump. I mean, being a couple-year assistant wrestling coach, making that jump to head coach. What were some of the first things you did when you became head coach for your program?
So the first thing I did was make sure all the kids them respect the sport, and respect the school that they wrestle for. So those were the first things I did, taking over and just making sure they knew wrestling is going to be hard and it takes a lot of commitment to wrestle.
Yeah. And I mean, just kind of when we talked a little bit, I mean, the biggest thing to me that I kind of ask you, and these are just questions I'm sure people in general are curious about, talk about like cutting weight. You have, and maybe tell the audience a little bit about like the weight classes that are involved that you coach, as well as how the cutting the weight process works at high school wrestling at that level.
Yeah, so in high school wrestling, I think there's 14 weight classes. I don't know if they added any since.
Okay.
And the lowest weight class is 103, and the highest weight class is 285. We call those the heavyweights. Everyone is put into a weight class, and like you will never get like a 103 pounder wrestling like a 135 pounder or up in their weight class unless they're talented enough to take on that responsibility.
Oh, wow. So you can jump. Okay.
You could jump, but you can only jump one weight class up.
Gotcha.
So a 103 pounder could go to 112. But some coaches, if your 103 pounder is a stud, they'll weigh him in at 112. So now he could jump up to 119, but he can't wrestle a 103 pounder. He can only wrestle 112, 119.
Okay. I gotcha.
So he won't lose his certification at 103 because he only weighed in one weight class up, but he actually wrestled two weight classes up.
Wow.
So
yeah, go ahead, Roy. I'm sorry.
So it's just like these little tricks and trades. You learn about the ins and outs of wrestling that a lot of coaches don't know, but I'm sure someone fills them in eventually.
Well, I mean, that's the big thing, right? Knowing the rule book really well and knowing how to use it kind of to your favor and benefit when you need it. Now, you mentioned weight classes and jump. Let's just talk about this at the high school level. This is so intriguing to me is cutting weight or kids dieting, I mean, as a head coach, how much in charge are you of their nutrition at this point, right? So obviously you're teaching them the wrestling as far as the physical aspect of this, but the dieting and eating and calorie intake, I'm sure there's a science to it. Talk about your role as a coach into teaching your kids the proper way to diet.
Right. So I mean, first thing you gotta do, you gotta treat your body like a temple. You can't put junk into it and expect it to perform good. So usually we'll come up with a list of stuff that you got they could eat if they're cutting weight, and like send it home with them so their parents would take a look at it. Some parents are like, yes, finally my son's eating vegetables. He's eating fish. He's eating grilled chicken. He's getting away from this um, junk food that he normally walks through the door with. And then some parents are like, I'm not changing whatever I put on the table, he's eating. It's for the kid to be like, all right, I know I got to lose weight. Let's start eating sensible, salad, yogurt, banana, stuff that's going to fill you up, but it's not bad for you. So we just make sure we put out a good spread of food that they could eat where it's good in protein, along with, you know, having them eat their vegetables. Because a
So
lot of kids, they don't want to eat vegetables.
well, that's it, right? And I find it amazing because so obviously a 5-day week, and maybe you wrestle on Saturday. So as far as like weigh-ins go, and these kids maintaining that weight, walk me through a little bit, like how like you come into school on a Monday. When is typically matches? Are they set certain days where you're doing weigh-ins, or is it kind of vary from week to week?
It kind of varies from week to week. So you're coming to school on a Monday, and you probably have a wrestling match on a Wednesday.
Okay.
So you'll start Monday, you know what, I'm 5 pounds over. It's probably water weight. If I push myself in practice real hard, I could lose that 5 pounds in practice, or I'll lose 3 pounds. And now it's my job to keep it under 3 pounds for when I come into practice on Tuesday. So I make sure when I work out hard, I eat something healthy that's going to fill me up, but not overeat it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just all about what you're putting in your body and how much of it you're consuming. So that means when I come in on Tuesday, step on a scale after school, I'm 3 pounds over. I'm good. One hard practice, I'll lose 5 pounds. I'll come in and do my morning weigh-in on Wednesday, probably like 6 o'clock in the morning, meet at the school,
Wow.
get my weigh-in in. Now I get a 3 pound gross allowance in the afternoon. So now my weight class jumps from 103 to 106 in
Wow.
the afternoon. So kind of helps.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. I'm just having like, I can't see you. I just see like, there you go. All right. I can see you much better. I know my arm gets gas when I use the phone too. So I totally get it in the same position. Um, so yeah, so obviously there's the week of work and these kids maintaining if and it's a lot of discipline. I mean, in any other high school sport, this doesn't exist as far as maintaining a weight and keeping that weight throughout the process. So that is not only physically a grueling sport, but also making sure that you are very strict on your diet, specifically during the season. So now let's flip into the season. You're a head coach. We walk into your practice tryouts. How does that work in wrestling? Because again, everything's weight classes. So do kids come in at a certain weight and say, I want to wrestle at this weight? Or do you look at the talent you have and say, hey, we got to put on some weight to this kid, or maybe this kid loses a few pounds, he can wrestle in this weight class? So walk us through a little bit, Roy, how you kind of go about your process of figuring out where kids belong as far as weight classes go.
Yeah, so coming into tryouts, I want to say the first week of wrestling, we don't simplify what weight class we're putting them in. You know,
Okay.
most of these kids already know what weight class they're going to. And if we're missing a weight class, we'll sit down with the individual and be like, we need to add 5 to 10 pounds on you, so you could help the team out. Everyone thinks wrestling is an individual sport, which it is. But when you go to dual meets and tournaments where you want to win as a team, that's the sacrifice that you have to make. We probably have a stud at 112 and don't have anyone at 119, and we have two guys fighting for 112. Someone has to make that sacrifice of going to 119.
And how do you find that buy-in? I mean, if two kids are battling for the same spot, like obviously you creating that culture, that winning atmosphere, that team culture, do you find it easy that kids are willing to kind of jump up and do what's best for the team? Or is that, because again, adding 7 or 8 pounds onto your body
Mhm.
is not easy, especially doing it. I mean, maybe you're eating junk food to get to that point, but at
Yeah,
some point you got to maintain too.
yeah, definitely, it's not easy, but I mean, there's two ways they could do it. They could have a wrestle off where the winner stays at the 112 weight class,
Yep.
and then the loser will go to 119, or they're both studs. One of them will just bite the bullets, be like, listen, let's do this for the team. I'll go 119. If I'm struggling at 119 and I know you're a better wrestler, you go 119.
Right.
It's just, I think when you get caught up in the moment of, I want to be a state champion, I'm definitely going to go to a weight class that's going to help me out the most, and they understand that.
Okay.
So you all season you might win at 112 and wrestle at 119 because you're the better wrestler. But when it goes to tournaments and stuff like that, they wrestle in the weight class.
That's great. And so just curious, as far as like leadership goes on your team, like obviously every year you have, your seniors or your veteran guys who've been doing it for a while. Talk about the leadership that goes into wrestling. I always just find this intriguing because again, my world's football. So it's always great to kind of hear where we have that familiarity with football, to kind of hear it from the wrestling perspective, where you see it from both worlds. Talk about the leadership there is in wrestling and how important it is for maybe the success of your team year to year.
Yeah, so the leadership, we vote for captains, unless they're the returning captains, and he usually takes control of the team. I like my captains to have a voice. If something's going wrong, we have a conversation, and if you usually have like a quiet captain, and then you'll have the outspoken one. And they both have to coincide together. Maybe the quiet one don't want to talk, but the outspoken one, yeah, I jump up and take that challenge on. And with that, they have to do a lot. They have to make sure the team is ready to go, everyone's focused. Practice is run to a fine tune where I don't have to be in the room to practice to be running. I could step out the room, all the assistants, we could have a conversation in the hallway and look back in the room, and practice is just like we're in the room still. So that's where you have to get that leadership where, coach is not here, but we could still do this without him being in the room. He don't have to babysit us. So
And I'm sure in a sport like wrestling, that's great to have, just because again, our world is football. You have a lot of assistant coaches that if you had to not be there, that they can get the show going, right? But in wrestling, I'm sure there's maybe you and one, maybe two other coaches at the most. So, and if it is just you by yourself, like your leadership is even that more important, because you need to know that kids are going to be in practice on time, and where you might be traveling to get to practice, you need
mhm.
to know that the kids in your building, or especially your leaders, are really making sure that kids are ready for practice and ready to go when coach gets there. So I think that's great. So I believe you guys compete in the DCL? Is that the league you wrestle in?
So we competed in the GBL first.
Okay.
And
Okay.
now they're in the DCL.
All
Correct.
right. And so talk about that jump from the GBL to the DCL, because I know it's two pretty good leagues, but I know the DCL and just are familiar with them in a lot of sports, and there's some real tough competition there. So talk a little bit about the DCL and being in the league that you're in, wrestling in the league that the conference that you're
So the DCL is a different breed.
in.
It's just like going. You have say you drive a Lexus in the GBL. Now jump to the DCL, you'll be driving a Land Rover, because the DCL is where, whew, there's a lot of good wrestling in DCL. You got the Whalen, you got the Lincoln Sudbury, you also have um, Westford Academy,
Yeah.
where they're putting out wrestlers like every day because those kids wrestle all year round. And for us to jump into the DCL, we had to wrestle all year round too. You got to put the time in, go to clubs. What's making all these kids good is because they spend a lot of time wrestling all year round. If they're not playing another sport or they're just tournaments, hitting clubs. So we have to change up our style of how we're coaching and putting these kids into the Doughboy, Smitty Bonds. Those where the good wrestlers are coming out of. So we have to like take that commute, drive up to New Hampshire, and spend time in wrestling clubs.
Yeah, and I know you just from coaching. I mean, and I know you're true to that. You take it vans, you do what you have to do to get your kids around from place to place, and that's something I've always admired about you. And obviously, you coach for a long time in the wrestling world. 18 years of doing it. And I know in 2015 you had won, and correct me if I'm wrong, Division One Central Wrestling Coach of the Year. Did I say that right?
Yes, correctly.
All right, awesome. There we go. So, to me, that's from 2001 to 2015. That's 14 years of working hard and building your program and jumping from one league to another league. And in 2015, talk about that feeling of getting that, Roy, because I know as a head coach, and I just know coaches in general, how much time they invest in work and the effort to do what they do day after day to build something that they're passionate about. So talk about winning an award like that and how it felt for you personally.
It felt great. I mean, my assistants, they also put in good time and work. It was an award for all of us that when I received the award. The kids put in all the hard work, and to get that award, it meant my peers respected what I was doing because they saw me like busting my butt,
Yeah.
putting in the time. So they respect what I was doing, and for them to vote me coach of D1 Central, it was incredible.
Yeah, and that's awesome. To me, I just, it's such an accumulation of hard work and the accumulation of work that you put in. And, I named all the different hats you wore over the last 20 years at Cambridge, but working hard and getting something that, and even again, the type of guy that you are, this is an award that you won individually. And the first people you're thanking are your coaches and your players. And there was a lot of people that, that contributed to this for you. But at the end, it's your leadership and it's you as a person that they follow and work hard and put in this effort of cutting weight or gaining weight or doing what's best for the team. So that's a huge testament to you. So, the last thing I'll ask you just about wrestling before we kind of jump into the football world a little bit is you were a coach there for 19 years. What would you say your biggest accomplishment, and maybe we just talked about it, is the award that you won, but what would you say overall was the biggest accomplishment as a head coach of that program? Maybe something you did for the program or where the program went from when you took over, something about the program that you are just most proud of.
Just to see the kids in that graduate, they come back and put time in, pop in the room, see how the program is going. Just to see that, they, they're just coming back year after year and just to see how the program's done.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's amazing. That's when I used to coach for Serge Clivio. That was the one thing I always found amazing about him was just how many people and how many old players would come back to practices and games and, pre-Thanksgiving stuff. And it's amazing when they come back to see how the program's doing. And again, it just shows the respect they have for you. Do you get a lot of alumni that maybe come back and assist and help you coach?
Yeah, actually, two of my assistant was my alumni. I actually coached them when they were in high school. Sam Novard and Isla Meady. They're
Yeah.
um, both sectional champs. They both was very, very good in high school wrestling. And they came back and actually they took the program over after I retired.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's great. And I think it's always nice to leave it to somebody who kind of is going to carry the message of the program and what they learn from you. So, there's still a big part of you that's a part of it. That was something amazing that I learned about you and just how great you were at it. And, the discipline that went into it. Like I said, when we did our pre-phone interview, I really thought it was amazing. And it was a great story for you to talk about. And again, like something I didn't know about you at all. So it was awesome. Now let's jump into the football world. Okay. This is where we met and this is how we got to know each other. So I know that you started off the football program as an assistant in 2006 before you had taken over in 2017. So I want to focus a little bit on your career as an assistant coach. Talk to me about how you got into the football program, because at that point you were 5-year head wrestling coach at the school, and then you decided to kind of also now work within the football program. So talk to us a little bit about the decision of deciding to coach football in Cambridge as well.
So I I had a love for football, and I was actually in wrestling practice one day, and the head coach Kwame Dixon sent someone out to, to grab me, and I came into a room and I'm looking at all like 7 people sitting down, and I'm like, am I in an interview? Here I am, I'm sweating because I'm in practice right now wrestling, and I'm sweating, dripping. And he's like, I'm just gonna ask you a couple of questions. He asked me a couple of questions. I get liked what I had to say. Next day he was like, congratulations, you're assistant football coach now. And I was like, oh, nice. So now I'm wearing 2 hats.
Right,
I gotta go
right.
from wrestling to football, and that kind of helps me like recruit kids too,
I was
because
just going to ask you that. I was
it
literally just going to ask you
definitely
that.
helps me recruit kids, because after football season's over, you try to get some tough kids to wrestle. So it helps me a lot.
Oh, I'm sure it's a dual thing instantly. And again, assistant football coaches, as an assistant football coach, your relationship with the kids are a lot different than when you become the head coach. So, you were there for a while. You were an 11-year assistant coaching football there, and you eventually become the head coach. So before we jump into that area, let's just talk about you being an assistant coach a little bit more. I was an assistant coach for 14 years of my career before I kind of made that jump. What was the biggest thing you learned as an assistant coach that got you ready to become a head coach? I know for me, it was really just, there was a lot of things, but to me, it was just the more work that you do outside of the job of just learning and creating the game plan and all that. So what was your biggest moment as an assistant that you felt like you grew and you were ready to be a head coach?
So the biggest moment is like I had to pay attention and learn how to carry your body language when you're a football coach, completely different than a wrestling coach. Um, you got to be humble. You got to be willing to learn from other people. You definitely have to be willing to like open up and know what's going on. A lot of basically a lot of work, because I used to coach. My favorite position to coach would be special team, and there's so much going into it. You have to watch other schools, and you have to come up with schemes when you're coaching. So it's just the biggest thing would be learn how to be humble and learn how to take something from someone that's trying to teach you.
Yeah, and I think that's, the biggest thing to assistant coaches is that, sometimes your head coach is going to be tough on you, and sometimes your head coach is going to throw a lot on your lap, and sometimes your head coaches aren't going to listen to anything you say, even when you
Very
study
true.
a ton of film or whatever, right? And
Right.
it comes with the lumps of the job. It comes with the idea that you're putting the work in to grow as a coach and to better put the position that you coach or the area that you coach in the best position to win. And as long as you're growing and doing that, your head coach realizes that. When they're throwing more things on you, it's because they know you can handle the responsibility. When
That's true.
sometimes they don't give you what you want, they want to see how you react, right? I mean, a head coach always having a couple good assistants in football, even just 2 or 3 really rock solid assistants, can
Hmm.
make a head coach's life a lot easier. So I always say what I went through is just, it built me to be ready to take that jump like you. So in 2017, you take this jump into becoming the head football coach. what was kind of your first order of business? Like, what was something you wanted to implement immediately into your football program that maybe wasn't there?
Uh, I would say hold the kids accountable. If you're gonna act up, you'll be punished. Um, if you say I'm gonna dedicate football in my life, I want to hold you accountable. Where you add practice, you're not taking your own days off. You're coming up with your own excuse. So just holding the kids accountable for their action.
And how hard was it? I mean, I can't imagine that's easy right out the gate.
No, it was hard. I mean, you had the kids them that fought back, and then you had the kids them that he's not joking. He's gonna bench you if you don't show up to practice, or you come up with some lame excuse why you're missing practice. And like you said, it was hard. I think we finally got to where we are now, where the kids are holding themselves accountable. They're holding one another accountable. So it's working out.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, so your current senior class was your freshman class when you started. So that goal of really holding accountability to your football team and your football players. Now that you see your seniors that were freshmen when you kind of started out, have you seen that change in your program? Do you feel like that your biggest goal was accomplished?
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of kids in weight room off season, and they're holding one another accountable. They're making sure kids are going to class. Making sure we're trying to keep our GPL high. It's just like if you put in the hard work, we're not going to let someone else come in and tear back down because they have actually spent 4 years. They're going into their fourth year, and the time that they put in, it's amazing. For off season lifting, summer workouts. Um, COVID hit right now, and they're itching to get back in the weight room.
Right.
They get the phone call, when are we going back in? When are we going back in? We're going to start working out. And I'm like, I'm just waiting on the big guy. So
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk about it, right? So obviously you've gotten to the point that you've changed the culture, and that was kind of your biggest goal, to hold kids accountable, to have your program be held accountable. And you've done a great job. I mean, we've talked about it before and how great of a job you've done, and I've seen it firsthand. Now let's talk about the next thing that I think is probably the most important thing, is a coaching staff. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of how you go about finding a coach that not only fits being a good football coach, but also what's best to be around these kids. Because there's great football coaches, but you always got to make sure that they know how to talk to kids and act around kids and conduct themselves around kids. So talk to me a little bit about your process.
so my process is when I interview coaches, I look at body language. Are they in it for themselves? Are they in it for making the program that they're about to coach better? Body language tells you a lot, and just how they carry themselves. You know, are we acting a fool when you're outside with your friends? Because when you're getting hired, you're actually representing the school that's hiring you. So you don't want to bring negativity to the school that hired you. So it's just body language and resume, call, check in to see who they've worked for and what does that person have to say about you.
Now, do you look at it kind of the same way as you look at wrestling a little bit, in the sense of, do you prefer alumni? Is that someone who's maybe gone through the program that you know through the program, or is you more kind of open to just new people, new ideas, new philosophy? Or is it a mix of both?
Both, a mix of
Yeah.
both, because some alumni, they think they know everything, but then they don't. And then some alumni would come in with great ideas, you know, and it's something that you're looking for. So it's a mix of both. You want to keep the alumni in, and you want them around the program. But if they're doing negativity things, you don't want them around your program.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, it's right to be said because, that was kind of my first big goal was to really get alumni back involved in the program as much as I could, but, in certain ways. And I think, you kind of saying the same thing, yep, I want them around the program, may not always be around actually the coaching the game itself, but still being around the program, maybe bringing kids back to talk to current players and so on and so
Right.
forth. Absolutely. So now, you kind of, you get your culture, you're starting to develop your culture, you develop your coaching staff. Let's talk a little bit just in general about your offensive philosophy. I mean, I know you have a great quarterback, hopefully we'll talk about in a little bit. But seeing you guys in sevens and seeing you guys in scrimmages over the last few years, I have an idea or a taste of things that you do, but what is kind of your philosophy on offense as far as how you go about attacking teams?
So the philosophy is it's the brain trust that I put in Mr. Justin Bernard. The guy has a great mind for football, and his brain trust. So we always just go about whatever they're giving us, we'll take it. If they're packing a box, we want to throw it. If they're if there are less numbers in the box, we'll run the ball. So it's just basically what they're giving us, we're taking it. And if we need to just pound the ball, just line up and run it.
Yeah. And I think that's important. What you're saying is kind of adjusting to what you're going to see, right? If teams are going to, you have someone who can sling the ball around and they're maybe out in a nickel package or only have three down and you have the numbers in the box, it's, hey, we're going to run the ball. I mean, spread is, so balanced with running the football and throwing the football. And there's so many different ways of motioning and window dressing and reshifting and, that you can always outnumber guys to the point of attack. So I agree. Just you take what's given to you, and too many people don't do it. They're just impatient and kind of want to go to their plays. And offense sometimes just wants to get the ball downfield as quick as they can instead of taking the 5 yards in the flat or the quick
Right.
little shallow drag across the middle of the field. That's always going to be there. So totally agree with you. And let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. I know you have a big say, obviously, on the defensive side of the ball, and you guys always are physical and fast on defense. So talk a little bit about your philosophies on defense and what type of system you run.
So we run a 4-3 defense. The defensive coordinator is Vincent Givens. He does a great job with the kids. He's actually alumni that went to college, played in college. He came back and he brings so much energy to the defense. He's always putting pressure on quarterbacks, whether blitzing them, show a front, jump out of a front, just keep the offense guessing what he's doing, and he's doing an amazing job so far.
Yeah, I saw you guys this year and over the years, over the last couple of years, and that was it. Physicality and pursuit to the football when we scrimmage you guys. That was two things that I always told our kids is, especially if you're running the football, is be ready to be gang tackled and pursued because you're going to get 6 or 7 guys to the hat every single time. So and you mentioned special teams and your love for special teams a little bit. Talk about how much, because a lot of coaches don't, practice special teams as much as maybe other coaches do or find it as important as other coaches do. Talk about, maybe how you practice special teams throughout the course of a week to prepare for a game.
Well, special teams important. I mean, a lot of people don't think it is. It's just secure the ball. To me, special teams is important. We have a great special teams coach. His name is Karim Cutler. He puts in a lot of work. I know he gets about, I want to say, 20 minutes a day for special teams. So he's getting his time in, and he puts a lot of work in. And it's just all about that turnover or that kickoff return back for a touchdown. He's always like emphasizing, be proud that you're on special teams, because that could be a game changer.
Yeah, and I feel like that's always the hardest thing at the high school level anyways, to really convince kids is how important special teams is. But I'll tell you, I've been a part of a lot of seasons that the opening kickoff and there was a big hit or there was a fumble or there was a kick return for a touchdown that just immediately like swayed all of the confidence onto the team that has that big play, and it can change a game very quickly, whether one team looks like they're running away with it, and then all of a sudden there's a turnover on special teams or a fake punt or something, and now the other team has all the momentum. So special teams is a game changer, no matter what point of the game it is or what time it is in the game. And I agree, it should be practiced every day, and your best players play on it. Bill Belichick, people laugh when he signs guys to 1 year or 2 years deals that are strictly special teams guys, but you don't see their special teams make too many mistakes. So there's a reason for that. So let's talk about the squad you have a little bit. I know obviously COVID hit and this has changed everything. Your season is now in February. You're not necessarily having the full schedule you would have or a playoff schedule. But let's talk a little bit about the team you have returned. I'm going to kind of give you the floor to maybe talk to us about some players or just, what you want to talk to us about your team.
I mean, like you said, COVID hit, and we're definitely missing football right now. They pushed us back to February, late February, hoping that we'll have a season then. These kids are looking forward to it. They've put their time in, all the hard work that they've done. They just want to play, because I think if the senior class doesn't get that opportunity to show how good they become, I think they'll just be like, we didn't get that chance. We have a great quarterback and great linemen, running back. And I think the time that they've put in would be worth, even if we get like 5 games in.
Right.
So I just want them to have a season.
Yeah. And I think for you, that's important, right? Because this is your freshman class. This is your class that you've built your core values and core beliefs in your program around, and you've seen that turnaround. And also, let's face it, for you too, numbers wise, right? Like these kids that are seniors, you have a pretty good team, you win some football games, and that only helps grow your program too. So for any football program, I really hope that they're able to get, games in and that they're able to play the full schedule that they anticipate to play. Because I think it's what's great for these kids. It's tough to lose a season, but I think also for coaches in their programs, for someone like you who has, built this team up and you have it to the point that you have some players. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. I've seen it live and I've seen it firsthand. So, I'm hoping for all coaches that they get that opportunity to get that full schedule. And even if it's during the frigid months of February, March, and April, or beginning of April anyways.
Very cold. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we have a great wide receiver core, and these kids have put the time in. And I praise them, I see all the hard work they put in. So just to have a season would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to kind of step away from the sports a little bit and just kind of ask you this question in general, just from talking to you and really learning a lot more about you than I already knew, is you've been coaching in Cambridge your entire coaching career. You also have probably, you lived in Cambridge most of your life from what we talked about. Talk about your relationship and you work in Cambridge, you work at Harvard, right? So you are literally in Cambridge nonstop all day, every day. Talk about your relationship with the city of Cambridge, because Cambridge must mean a lot to you that you're here working with the youth. You've been doing it over for 20 years. You've lived in Cambridge. You went to school. I mean, talk about your relationship with the city of Cambridge in general. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, Cambridge means a lot to me. I always want to see kids like become adults and grow. It's like I've coached football, wrestling, all these sports, and most of young men. And just to see a young man grow up to be a man and eventually move out of Cambridge, or if they don't move out of Cambridge, they're doing something good. It's just to see that. Cambridge means a lot to me. I don't think I'll ever coach anywhere else besides Cambridge, but never say never.
Yeah.
I just want to see Cambridge do good things.
Yeah, and I think the city of Cambridge is really lucky to have someone like you, because you put the work in, you put the effort in, and most importantly, parents should feel relieved that their kids are around somebody like you, because at the end of the day, yes, you're competitive like any other coach and you want to put W's on the board, but you also care about the kid as a person in general and making sure that they're always doing okay. I mean, just from our conversations in football and seeing like how you used to shuttle kids around or making sure that kids had rides and kids were okay and who was getting picked up. I mean, that's the stuff that is after hours, extra hours that, a lot of coaches put into it, but I see you do it and you always do it with a smile on your face. So, and on top of it, you were a lacrosse coach for 7 years. So you have dedicated a lot of coaching time into the city of Cambridge. Talk a little bit about how, and I ask every coach who's on here the same exact question, talk about all that time that you put into sports in Cambridge. In lacrosse is the spring. So like football's fall, wrestling's winter, lacrosse is spring. So you are year-round coaching. Talk about, how it might affect you at the home front a little bit. Obviously, it affects time being home and personal life and so on. So talk about that sacrifice you make, Roy, to do what you do.
Well, the sacrifice I had to make because I have a great wife.
Yeah.
She understands coaching is my passion. So she just basically understands what I'm doing. My son, I drag him along with me now because he's of age where he could
Yeah.
tag along and I don't have to worry about him. But even when he was younger, he was always like coming around, and it's just, what it is, just like you're putting in the time and people see all the time you're putting in the passion that you have for the sport or the city that you coach in. They respect that.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, I think it's just it's cool when you brought up your son. I'm a father of two kids, and I hope to get back into the coaching game someday. And I would love to have my son or even my daughter if she wanted to be around it. And that must be real special. So I'll ask you this, and again, this is something I've asked every coach too, and we'll kind of end it with this before we jump into our final segment. Is talk about your advice that you have for younger coaches, guys like you who started out at points at assistant and have worked your way up at head coach, and you specifically two completely different programs. But what would be your advice to young coaches who are looking to kind of make that rise into having their own program someday?
My advice would be, a couple of things. Be humble. Don't think you know everything. Be willing to learn different things and take advice from people that's been doing it a long time. And at the same time, know it's going to be hard work. You got to put in a lot of time. There's going to be days you're going to be like, yo, I'm the first one in, last one out. So just be humble and learn. Don't think that, oh, I know everything. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do, because there's always someone that has a little trick up their sleeve or they know something that you don't know. Just be humble and willing to learn from everyone and anyone.
Yeah, and I think that's just great advice in general. I think young coaches just there's such a learning curve. I mean, going into coaching, I remember day one of football, I thought I knew everything. And after like the first week, I knew nothing. I knew nothing compared to what I should know.
Exactly.
And I think that that's for young coaches. That's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay
Mhm.
to not know something. It's how you learn. It's the only way you learn is that you ask or you say, hey, how do I do this? There's someone who's there is always willing to help you. And like yourself, you have a great head, you're a great head coach, you have a great coaching staff. So never be afraid to learn as a young coach. So coach, I thank you so much for coming on here. I think that you really, to me, capture what coaching's about. Someone who's really dedicated to it, somebody who's done it for a really long time. And to me, just the character aspect of who you are as a person and how you carry yourself and conduct yourself around your kids.
Thanks for having me. I wish I could do this more often.
Yeah, but hey, before we go, we do got one last segment here. We do have our 2-minute drill. So this is how it will work, Roy. I'm basically going to just ask you a bunch of questions, and I'll set a timer for 2 minutes. And I do get one booth review, like in football. If you get asked a question that you want a little bit more time to explain, or I want you to explain, I'll throw the
Okay.
flag and say explain it a little bit more. Okay. So again, I'll give you a few seconds to answer it too. You don't have to just give me a 1-word answer. If you want like 10 seconds to answer it, you definitely can. Okay. So let me get the timer set, and here we go. 2-minute drills on. Who do you think right now is the best quarterback in the NFL?
Be Patrick Mahomes. The kid is incredible. But behind him, you got the Russell Westbrook, because that's basketball player.
Russell Wilson. I know who you meant. You meant.
No, definitely. Them two are just putting up numbers. That's incredible right now.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the best coaching advice you've ever got?
The best coaching advice I've ever got. You're never too old to learn anything new.
Hey, amen. 4th and goal from the 3-yard line, coach. What are you running?
Zone read.
Okay. In wrestling, if your team could have had a theme song to come out to like WWE style, what theme song would you guys have come out to?
That's a good one. I would say that's actually a good one. Because it would have been the team way back when. That's actually a good one. Don't have an answer for that one.
Okay, that's okay. We'll talk privately about it after. So are you a coach that prefers to throw the ball on first down or run the ball on first down?
I prefer to do whatever the defense is giving me.
Okay, fair enough. Who's the best wrestler you ever coached in your 18 years of being a head coach?
Oh man, you're gonna have some wrestlers hate me now.
I'll give you time to explain. I'll throw the red flag here no matter what. So I'll give you a little time.
So we have just 2 of them, and they're both my assistants right now. Sam Novard and Yves Lamidi. One's a 3-time sectional champ, and one is a 1-time sectional champ. But he also plays 6 in New England.
Oh wow. Okay. So we'll give it a tie. I mean, I think that's pretty fair. We'll give it a tie. All right. And the last question I'll ask you here that we'll have time for, and I'll also give you a red flag for this. With that being said, who's the best football player that you've ever coached through Cambridge Rindge? And that can include you being an assistant coach as well.
The best football player I've ever coached. Be a young man called Fitz Lee. He reminds me of me. He plays the game on a different level. He's violent when he needs to be violent on the football field. But if you see him off the football field, you'd be like, oh, he's a humble kid. But he's very athletic. I think he could have probably played any sport he wanted to play. He played basketball, which I tried to get him to wrestle. He could have played literally anything. The kid was that athletic.
Wow. Okay. You've survived the 2-minute drill. That was great. I'll have to hit you up about the theme song at some point. But honestly, it was great having you. I learned a lot about you. And again, I think it's important for your players and those that are listening to understand that the dedication that goes into coaching and how you conduct yourself. And like I said, you're one of the first people I thought of. You're one of the first people that I really built a relationship with the head coach, outside of me being an assistant coach. So it was great to really coach with you and work with you these last few years. And I'm very lucky to have you on the show today. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. But I hope to see you back on the sideline, when the young boys them get older. They're like, hey, let's go watch you coach.
Yeah.
I'd love to see you back out there. But I know your hands are full right now.
Well, I appreciate everything. I really do. So from Beyond X's and O's podcast, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Sounds good.